Welcome back to Talk Oxford, the show that gets you talking. Joining me on the sofa tonight is Alison Jarrod from Oxford Celiac Group and Maureen Houston, a nutritional therapist. And we've been talking a lot of things foodie. We've got some delicious delights on the table that we've been sampling throughout the break. But we're now going to move on and talk about, announced in the Queen's speech earlier this week, new regulations have been introduced to monitor phone use and internet use, and it's all about undermining and trying to tackle the big terrorism threat. And obviously Liberals are up in arms about this, but I want to ask you both how you feel about this. I mean, if we're already being monitored already, which many of us are at work, or all our messages are stored on WhatsApp and on our iPhones, should we really be bothered by this law being set in stone?
I think if you're a genuine individual, you are aware that you are being monitored on a daily basis, whether it be through work or using your internet availability, your computer, CCTV, when you use your bank card in the cash machine, your mobile phone signal, can all be traced. You are being watched constantly in some form. As long as you're aware of that, I can't personally see a problem with that if you are not doing anything that you shouldn't be doing.
No, my feeling is exactly that. I feel I've got nothing to hide, so why should I be remotely concerned? And if it's going to be a means of preventing any future acts of terrorism, it's all for the better.
Yeah, I mean, I suppose some people are worried that if the wrong sorts of people, if criminals get hold of this information and sell it on, and it can be used to steal your identity and build up a picture about you. Does that
well, that's a completely different matter.
Yeah.
If you're talking about stealing identity and, you know, hacking into other people's bank accounts and credit cards.
Quite easy anyway.
I think, you know, that we're getting into the criminal world there. And I suppose there's a fine line between the criminal world and terrorism. I don't know, but since it already exists, all of this monitoring and surveillance, I don't know, I can't see how different it's going to be.
Yeah, and I mean, a lot of people will criticise it and think, well, how on earth does it tackle terrorism? I mean, they when the riots were going on in London a few years back, they proved that lots of these groups met up and coordinated their strikes and on Facebook. So from that sense, do you think it's sort of proven right that you do need to monitor social media as well?
Social media is obviously a large thing to monitor, but you would obviously need to work with the police forces and other terrorist organisations to bring together information. So it's information gathering exercise to make sure that you do have the right target areas.
I mean, they said that the Arab Spring in each of those countries could not have happened if it had not been for social media. That was how they managed to organise themselves and you know, get so many people behind them.
No, absolutely. I mean, I'd personally be worried though, because I don't know, I think there's just a nasty feeling where you send all these jokey messages and whatever, and are we entering sort of a Big Brother society where every little move is being watched?
I think we've been living in a Big Brother society for a long time.
Am I just being terribly naive?
I think they're not going to be looking at the general public as such. They know who they're looking for.
Yeah.
They would have had tip-offs. They would be monitoring individuals that are believed to be linked to terrorism.
Yes.
And I think anybody that, hopefully like you, or are not linked, and probably wouldn't have anything to worry about.
And you mentioned earlier, Alison, that you felt it was already happening in your workplace. Are all your emails
are monitored and your internet usage is monitored through your IT department, and I know that is through a lot of companies.
Yeah. And Maureen, what about you?
Well, you see at the Summertown Clinic and also at the Beaumont Street Clinic, where I have consulting room, we're all self-employed.
Yeah.
And we hire the rooms there.
Yeah, so you're allowed to do what you like.
Pretty much, as long as it
no
doesn't
dirty
interfere with
sites
anything else.
on your history anyway.
There isn't the time. There isn't the time while we're in there, quite frankly.
No.
You know, so it simply doesn't apply. It's not like working for a company, even a small company.
Yeah, well, that would open up a whole other can of worms, looking through people's internet history. But we've got time for just one last topic. So it's the bane of people living in Oxford. It's traffic. What do we do? We're always held up. Poor Maureen was held up on the A40 coming here to Witney this evening, and we've all been in that traffic jam or trying to find somewhere to park in Oxford. It's a bit of a nightmare. Now, earlier this week, someone wrote in to the Oxford Mail and suggested a tram system for Oxford. They claim that the trams last twice as long as buses, have an awful lot more capacity, and would bring the different sides of the city together. So my question to both of you is, do you think a tram system would be feasible in the city, or is this just pie in the sky?
I think it would depend entirely on the costing of it.
So the cost
I
would be
mean,
phenomenal.
you know, does the Oxford City Council have the budget for something like that? It would be, you know, would have to create a massive infrastructure. What kind of disruption would that cause while it's, you know, being built?
Well, I know that the London roads already been dug up this year, and I think it would be chaotic. And I know from Edinburgh, when they put in their tram system, well, they have to dig up every road to lay down the rails. So
Sure, yeah.
I think it would probably be a bit of a nightmare.
It does
Yes.
work in Manchester. I know that it's quite efficient, isn't it?
Is it? I don't know.
yeah.
It's been a long time since
Yeah.
I've been in the centre of Manchester.
Yeah.
But and I suppose they'd have to sort of appoint form a study group, you know, to go and look at these other cities that have installed this tram system, look into it in detail. I mean, you know, in the ideal world, yes, it'd be marvellous.
Yeah. I mean, obviously, Oxford's a very green city, and this might add sort of a few more green credentials to their green bow, as it were. So
Would it, in fact? Do they not pollute in the same way that buses pollute?
well, I believe as they're electric, they've tried to introduce hybrid buses in the city, but then they're not as reliable, and say that they're not sort of. And as they're hybrid, they're still going to be belching out diesel fumes every
We've
so
got the
often.
new train station, isn't it, being opened the end of this year at
Yeah.
Waterita near Killington. So again, that's going to decrease the amount of traffic that's driving through Oxford,
Yeah.
because there's an additional source into the city.
Yeah.
So the council are looking at other options of bringing traffic outside
Yeah.
of the city as such.
I mean, do you think they should be? I mean, we've all got a right to drive into the centre, and well, for work, I always have to drive into the centre because I don't have time to get park and ride, and so should they just provide more parking spaces, maybe?
Unfortunately, I live in Witney, and the A40 on a bus can take over an hour and 40, but then you'd be stuck in the traffic jam anyway, so
Yeah. Well, we've had
waste your time on the bus.
Many guests have not arrived to our studio
Yeah.
for the sake of the slow buses.
I live in
sadly.
Bicester, and when I'm in the city centre clinic in Beaumont Street, I always used to drive, and I always used to allow an extra half hour or more to find a parking space. And now, for quite a few years, I've been using the Park and Ride, and it is marvellous.
Oh, so you're a big praiser of the park and ride. That's unusual.
Marvellous. 10 minutes from my house to the Pear Tree
Yeah.
Park and Ride, and another 10 minutes on the bus,
Yeah.
maybe 5 minutes waiting in between. It's
Gosh, that is
fantastic.
To the
good.
bus lane, which is the advantage.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe I've been unlucky with my park and ride experiences, but I've always found them quite slow and expensive, although parking's expensive
I
enough in
think
the centre.
it levels itself out,
Yeah.
doesn't it? I mean, time in the mornings, I don't think you're going to save a lot more time
No.
driving in
No.
than using a bus.
No.
Well, I've certainly saved time, a lot of time, by using the Park and Ride.
Yes, golly. Well, that's very interesting. Well, I mean, other cities like London obviously have a fantastic transport system. Do you think
In
sort of
some parts of London.
some parts of London?
You know, I used to live in South London,
Yeah.
and the tube network is not nearly as abundant and
Yeah.
widespread in south of the river
Yeah.
And it's-
as it is north.
Connecting trains home as well. I mean, last train back
Yes.
from Paddington is not that late, is it? If you
Yeah.
wanted to go to a pop concert or something
Oh,
like
you mean
that.
going from Oxford to London?
as well.
Yeah, well, I've got all my family in London, so I usually stay.
Yeah, you pop
perhaps
over
later
quickly.
trains
Yeah.
home and things like that to
No.
improve people using it.
I think we're quite lucky on Witney because I think the last bus comes back from Oxford at 2:30 in the morning. I found
Oh
out.
my goodness.
3:15. So
Really?
on
I think
Friday and
we're very
Saturday.
lucky from that
Yeah.
That's
respect.
very good.
Yeah, but do you think there's sort of more things we can learn from other cities? I mean, Manchester's
yes,
got
I'm
a
sure.
tram network.
Yes.
We could at least look into putting one in.
Yeah, it would be setting up the
Manchester's
project.
very, very much bigger than Oxford.
Yeah.
So I'm guessing they would have a proportionately larger budget.
It's a very compact city, isn't it, Oxford as well? It's very small. It is a small city. I mean, it's equivalent to Derby is another small city, isn't it? That has a centralised shopping area.
Yeah. So, well, that's it. We're probably not a tram system. We're a little too small. But before we go, I want you to both to sort of show off some of your wonderful wares that you've brought in. So, you've got this gluten-free magazine, and so just to talk quickly, recap about Oxford Celiac Group.
Yeah, basically we produced an eating out guide to all the local pubs and restaurants in Oxfordshire that provide some form of gluten-free dish on their menu, because a lot of people that have been newly diagnosed become quite shy and introvert and don't want to go out and eat with their friends. So we try and encourage them to build up their social lives again, enjoy eating food, and go and find an establishment that will be happy to cater for them. So, and that was helpful. And there's lots of magazines out on the shelves that advertise gluten-free recipes. There's Phil Vickery there, that some of you may recognise, who is a chef and a patron of Celiac UK. And more recently, Caroline Quentin. You may remember her from Men Behaving Badly and other comedies and things.
Absolutely, and Jonathan
90s.
Creek.
Has also recently been diagnosed. So again, she's helping to raise awareness with the condition.
So it's absolutely great. And Maureen, what would be your last 2 tips for anyone who wants to live a healthy lifestyle before we disappear?
Cut out gluten would be number 1, and cut out sugar, refined sugar.
Cut out. Well.
And add in loads of vegetables.
Add in loads of colourful vegetables.
If you can't manage 10 a day, make sure you get 7 or 8.
7 or 8. Gosh, well, that's very worthy advice.
And vegetables grown above the ground. Rather than root vegetables.
Golly. Right. Well, unfortunately, that's all we've got time for on Talk Oxford this evening, but thank you very much to both my guests for joining me for our wonderful discussion on food, dieting, gay marriage, and trams possibly heading our way in Oxford. But until the next time, keep talking.